Yeah, got those.
Anything else?
Damn, it is packed in here, bro. I'm ugly for this. This whole parking lot is full, bro. But we're here at the Cinemark. Alright, so before we get started, I just want to say this video will be divided into a couple of sections. The non-spoiler and spoiler review. That being said, timestamps are set up below for your convenience. And again, thank you for watching, Pups. Okay, it's like 2 in the morning and I've been up since 4 yesterday and I'm exhausted and I want to die. Normally, if I saw any other movie in the theater being up as early as I was, I'd knock out cold in my recliner seat. But that wasn't the case here in my Thursday 7:40 p.m. viewing of Spider-Man No Way Home. Alright, so it's finally out. We have it available at our viewing pleasure. Although I'm sure the theaters are beyond packed. But like, we made it. And after all that anticipation and hype, we can finally have a discussion on this movie. Fuck. And look, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. I really enjoyed this movie. Like, coming from a cynical fuck who considers most MCU outings to be average but enjoyable for the most part with a few standouts, I'm really glad I feel this way. Not gonna lie, I did honestly get a bit worried that I was expecting maybe just a bit too much from this movie and I was setting it up to disappoint me, but I really think that this movie left me satisfied. And as this is my non-spoiler section for this review, I'm just going to say that I will only be discussing the elements found in the trailers and other official things that the studio decided to present to us. All that other shit I will be discussing in my spoiler section, and I'll be sure to give you guys a warning. So, as far as the MCU Spider-Man trilogy goes, this is easily the best of the outings in every conceivable way. I mean, the characters were improved substantially. I just love seeing the direction that the filmmakers were taking them in, especially our leads. Tom Holland, who was already pretty good as the titular character, absolutely kills it in this film. Some of his subtle expressions and remarks really got me choked up emotionally, and that's what I've been wanting the whole time from this iteration of Spider-Man. And even his more intense, out there moments. Just real great stuff. Like, no joke, I sat in my seat thinking this is what I've been wanting the whole time. Like, Peter gets put through the fucking ringer, and it almost made me feel bad for all the times me and the other snobs would call him, Iron Boy Jr. But no, that's not the case here. This man does some growing up and becomes a fucking man. And in turn, seeing what Peter goes through in this movie made me appreciate the previous films in this trilogy just a bit more. Like, I still have my gripes, but I feel like Peter's motivations, decisions, and circumstances have created a pathway shown here in No Way Home that feels natural. Like, even Doctor Strange states in the movie that he forgets that Peter, at the end of the day, is just a kid. And all that kid shit catches up to Peter here. So I'm gonna tip my hat off to John Watts and the creative team for really, making Peter's character just grow up. As for our other characters, I think this is easily the best Zendaya has been in this entire series. I think she's a great actress, but I'm not particularly fond of her MJ. But she is most certainly fleshed out here, and she feels like a real character. Also, her chemistry with Tom Holland is just unmatched. And our villains. Nothing but smiles on my face all across the board. And everyone's great, especially Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe as Doc Ock and Green Goblin, respectfully. Hell, even Jamie Foxx got to do his thing, which makes me happy because I love that dude. And when it comes to the villains and their chemistries, it's just top notch. I know a lot of people were worried that this movie might have been a little overstuffed with too many villains, because we've seen that in the past before, but no, this is really good stuff. When it comes to the other filmmaking aspects, I think this film is also a really big improvement. My main gripes with the first two John Watts films is that I feel like a lot of the visual flair is lacking. The shot composition was lackluster and it could have overall used better directing. However, there are many improvements here, especially in the beginning where we see how Peter handles the aftermath of his identity being revealed. I just really thoroughly enjoyed a lot of the camera movement that was used for good comedic effect. And another sequence that stood out to me and probably most people watching it was the Doctor Strange dimensional fight sequence, because like that was pretty good. Overall, I hope Watts continues to learn as he gears up for his Fantastic Four film set to come out in the hopefully near future. So again, he could still use work, but I guess we can all learn how to do better. So one of my main concerns coming into the film was that I was worried how it would be written as far as jokes go, and I'll say this. I don't really have a problem with any of the jokes. I mean, shit, compared to most MCU outings, like especially Eternals, like that was such a bad fucking movie. I'd say the jokes were done pretty successfully. And I'll give that to this trilogy. They're pretty cute in that way. But as far as my non-spoiler section goes, I'm gonna wrap this up. So in summary, this is easily my favorite of the new trilogy. The stakes were great, the action was tight. Oh yeah, quick note on the action, some of the fight scenes in this movie are absolutely fucking brutal, and I loved it. That's what I've been wanting. Again, give me more of that shit. But back to the movie, the performances were really good, and I will definitely say that this movie left me happy. It is such a huge improvement on everything that I had originally griped with in the first two Tom Holland outings. And if I had to give this movie a number score, I'd probably put it somewhere in the 8 to 9 range. So let's just say it's an 8.5 out of 10. I'd probably give this a higher score if they had worked on this movie just a little bit more. I don't know if you get me, but it definitely seems that with all the drama behind the film and its studios, things seemed a bit rushed, so more time to fine-tune things could have definitely helped. But like, whatever, I'm glad it's out, and I thoroughly loved it. Who knows, upon rewatch, I might just, bump this movie up in score and ranking, because there are definitely sequences in this movie that are 10 out of 10. I most certainly recommend this film, but you're probably going to see it anyway, or already have seen it. But if you haven't seen this movie, I'd advise you to end this video now and come back when you can, because I'm about to get into some spoilers. Take this spoiler warning now, because we're starting this section in 3, 2, 1. Okay, but like, first things first. Well, they fucking did it, guys. They put in my man's Toby and even slipped in young Andrew Garfield too. And like, no duh, we all saw it coming, but it was a matter of how and when. I simply thought they were just gonna pop out of nowhere like the villains did, but it was kind of cool and hilarious seeing Ned use some of that Doctor Strange magic to bring them to us. And of course, the crowd just went batshit crazy. And could you blame them? Like, this is what we were waiting for. And I must say that I got much more than I had originally been anticipating. Like, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, at most they'll probably just be a cool cameo in the last 30 minutes, helping out our Tom Holland when shit gets real tough. And while that is certainly true, they're here at the halfway point of the movie. And the movie is 2.5 hours long, so like, thank you. A real huge thank you from this kid who, like many other kids, grew up watching these movies and idolizing Spider-Man. Like, thank you. This is most certainly fan service at its finest, but it's great fan service at that. I simply couldn't be more grateful, couldn't have been more happy seeing my man's Toby. I'm just gushing about it, bro, because the kid in me could die happy now but be resurrected because he wants to see this again because it's so amazing. But let's turn our attention to Andrew Garfield for a quick second. He was fucking great. Like, I have my gripes with his portrayal in his respective movies, but I never blamed that on him. I more so blame that on the filmmaking and screenwriting, because I knew that given the chance, this man would shine because he's simply my favorite actor in general of these 3 live action iterations. Oh, and that moment where he saves MJ from falling was just great. Like, I know we all saw that coming when we saw the trailer, but man, real tearjerker. I heard people sniffling in the audience. And what's really great about Andrew in the scene is that he doesn't have to say much, but you can simply tell by the look on his face and the tear coming down that this is a man free of his guilt. He's just redeemed. And overall, the chemistry between the 3 live action homies we got here was fantastic. Like, seeing them kind of gush over one another was cool, and it hit me right in my feels. Like, when Andrew tells them that he loves them, I'm like, oh man, that's just great. Like, don't do that to me, please. But like, in the end, when you see Toby with his arm over Andrew's shoulder, like, you know, both sharing an embrace, and then they eventually hug Tom Holland, is just real powerful stuff. And I feel like, depending on whoever might be your favorite Spider-Man, I know you got exactly what you wanted. And they weren't really afraid to show the strengths of each Spidey and what they brought to the table, especially when it came to Tom, because like, he's the only one who's ever worked with other people, so he most certainly brought that strength to this dynamic, and that definitely caught me by surprise. And quick little tangent on some of the jokes I enjoyed. I really loved that youth pastor joke from Andrew to Toby, and Jamie Foxx's joke about him thinking Andrew would be black since he helps people out in Queens and shit. That was real good, and I really loved how they were kind of acknowledging and freaking out over Toby's organic shooters, which, by the way, I know that Spider-Man more accurately has, you know, web shooters, but I like the organic shit. It feels more I don't know, real to a character named Spider-Man. But enough about those tangents. Let's get into some of the bigger events that happened in this movie, because like Aunt May, yeah, they did that. They killed my girl Marissa Tomei. But I'm gonna be real honest, I had accidentally read a comment on some dude's TikTok cosplay and it said RIP Aunt May, so I was like, fuck you troll, but also shame on me for not going dark online like I was supposed to. But like, whatever, it still hit, and being at the hands of Green Goblin made it all the more brutal, and it hurt to see considering it was May who wanted to help Norman in the first place. Real crazy shit. And speaking of Goblin, I'd consider him the real big bad of this movie. Like, he definitely does the most as far as the other villains go when it comes to his effect on Tom Holland's character. Then I'm gonna say Doc Ock and Electro are right there behind him. And like, Lizard and Sandman are cool, but I'm gonna be honest, I was a bit taken back by their CGI portrayals. Lizard, for the most part, I'll excuse that, but when it came to Sandman, and when he turned back to normal, I'm like, that is most certainly stock footage of Thomas Hayden Church. I don't know, maybe I'm tweaking, but that's back to my point on why I feel like this movie could have spent more time in the filmmaking process, because you could have kind of, you know, fine-tuned those things out. I also know that there were, you know, COVID precautions, or maybe they didn't want to film too much outside because, you know, we could have had leaks, but most of these movies are made in the studio anyway, so I don't see why that couldn't be a bit of a more possibility. But like, whatever, it's out and I still really enjoyed it. And real quick, I'm going to talk about that fight scene between Goblin and Peter. They kind of share a few punches in a couple sequences, but yeah, real brutal shit. Loved it. That's what I want. I want that real hand-to-hand combat, and who other to bring that than my man's Willem Dafoe. Just really brought me back to Spider-Man 1. That sequence when they're fighting in the end is absolutely brutal, and I really couldn't have asked for more. Like, when Tom is beating the shit out of Green Goblin in the end and you get Toby stopping him, I'm like, oh yes. Like, I knew he wasn't gonna kill him, but I'm glad it was Toby that stopped him, because it's like, that's his villain. And I didn't cry throughout this whole movie, but I would have most certainly cried if they had killed my man's Toby. Like, when he got stabbed, I'm like, you fuckers are not doing this to me right now. Please don't fucking do this. But then they kind of play it off as a joke, like, yeah, I've been stabbed before. Like, okay, thank God. Like, please don't do that to me. And in the end, they really went through with the whole spell shit. Everybody forgets Peter, and he's by himself. And I really enjoyed that setup. I really enjoyed that they didn't revert things back to normal right away. Like, I'm sure in the future films they'll probably, you know, have everything come back to normal, or he'll get to a place where he's comfortable and, you know, he knows everybody again, or everybody knows him rather. But the fact that the movie ends with him solo by himself in some crummy apartment, which definitely reminded me of the Raimi films, I thought that was important, because I think the next step in these Spider-Man movies is to really let Peter hold his own and gain his own identity and figure out who he is, both as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. And real quick, I'm just going to discuss the post-credit sequences. We have 2 of them. I'm sure nobody's surprised. I know a lot of people were kind of hyped to see Tom Hardy in this movie. I definitely wasn't, Because look, man, I'm not a fan of those movies at all. I understand that people like them. I even understand that people like them just because they're so horrendous and out there. I'm sorry, but I just don't like them because I really wanted a more serious take on Venom, but whatever. He was definitely just kind of a waste here, just quick little cameo, like, oh, I'm gonna disappear, and here's the little symbiote, so set up for the next movie. It's like we have to introduce the symbiote somehow, but whatever. I guess I'm excited to see where Spider-Man will go after that if he comes in contact with the symbiote. And the second post-credit sequence was just the trailer for the new Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which I'm excited to see because my boy Sam Raimi is directing it. Not really much to say. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm a little sad it's delayed, but again, that might be a good thing. Yeah, not really much to say about that, but that was pretty cool. I'm sure there are a bajillion things I could have said about this movie. I always have a lot more to say, and I always think about what I could have said, but you know what? This video has been going on too long, and I'm just gonna wrap it up here and say thank you for watching. Go like and subscribe if you'd like, and I appreciate you clicking on this video or whatever it may be. You know, it means a lot. I'm really trying to, get this ball rolling, and I'll see you next time. Later, pups.